Mirror Talk Episode 10, The Future Tongue. Welcome back to Mirror Talk, the language of the nervous system. Over the course of this first season, Everyday Mirrors, we've traced the roots of speech from our earliest conditioning to the present moment, how tone taught us belonging, how silence became survival, and how words, when spoken with awareness, can rewire the nervous system towards safety. Each episode has revealed another layer of the linguistic body we live inside. In the first word, we discovered that language imprints the state before the sentence. In the silent treatment, that absence speaks as loudly as sound. In the apology loop, we examined how guilt scripts and fawning phrases reflect nervous systems seeking peace, not punishment. And as the season unfolded, through word wounds, the script of silence, anchoring safety, and building bridges, we learned to listen differently, not just to what is said, but to the physiological rhythms beneath every phrase. Now at the close of this first arc, we turn our attention forward, toward the future tongue. This is not a language invented overnight, nor a manifesto prescribing the right way to speak. Rather, it is a living hypothesis, an invitation to co-create a vocabulary that honors awareness, emotional truth, and mutual regulation in an age of speed, simulation, and linguistic fatigue. From survival speech to conscious communication, every word carries a lineage. Some were born in urgency, the language of survival, built for command and compliance. These survival codes served us once, short, sharp imperatives like stop, no, don't, that mobilized instinct and narrowed focus. In NSL terms, they were sympathetic accelerators, triggering movement, alertness, or defense. But as we've learned, what protects us from danger can limit us in dialogue. When urgency becomes our mother tongue, conversation collapses into control. Our tone quickens, our breath shortens, and the body loses its bridge to curiosity. By contrast, conscious communication, a phrase we've refined across the series, slows the tempo. It introduces space between trigger and translation. It uses syntax that regulates rather than rushes. Let's pause and breathe. I want to understand. We can take time with this. These phrases may seem simple, yet neurologically, they rewire safety. They expand vagal tone, restore prefrontal access, and remind both speaker and listener that understanding unfolds in time, not tension. Thus, the future tongue begins where survival ends, in the recognition that our biology of defense must evolve into a biology of dialogue. The nervous system as lexicon throughout Mirror Talk, we've approached language as both a mirror and a map of the nervous system. With the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, we propose that communication is not merely symbolic, it is reflective and reciprocal. What we say and how we say it encodes the internal state that produced it. Words are not inert, they are mirrors of embodiment, reflecting the rhythm, resonance, and regulation of the speaker. These are not signs of moral failure, but of state dominance. They reveal a nervous system speaking through the mouth, one that equates speed with safety, control with calm. NSL teaches us that regulation alters language structure. When the body is flooded with adrenaline, syntax becomes sparse, a linguistic vasoconstriction mirroring the physiological one. Conversely, when parasympathetic tone returns, sentences lengthen, tone softens, and nuance reappears. Thus, the evolution of our communication mirrors the evolution of our capacity to stay present under pressure. The cost of urgency modern communication often rewards survival syntax. Online, brevity signals clarity, hot takes outpace reflection. In workplaces, decisiveness is prized over discernment. In relationships, immediacy is mistaken for intimacy. Yet the cost of constant urgency is coherence. As language contracts, empathy evaporates. When we reduce complexity to command, we lose the relational fabric that holds meaning together. This pattern aligns with temporal linguistics, the emerging study of how language shapes our perception of time. Phrases like, I need it now, just get to the point, or we don't have time for this induced temporal compression, a tightening of internal tempo that mimics threat physiology. The listener's breath syncs with the speaker's stress, and soon both are trapped in the same accelerated loop. In NSL terms, urgency acts as a contagious rhythm. It hijacks shared regulation, pulling multiple nervous systems into sympathetic synchrony. Over time, a culture steeped in survival syntax becomes collectively dysregulated, efficient, but emotionally impoverished. The future tongue must therefore do more than expand vocabulary. It must expand tempo. The emergence of conscious communication, if survival syntax is shaped by fear, conscious communication is shaped by safety. It arises when awareness slows speech enough for intention to catch up with impact. In this mode, sentences grow longer not out of indulgence, but precision. Pauses punctuate thought. Tone carries curiosity, not command. The grammar itself mirrors regulation. Conjunctions link rather than divide, and over, but, modals invite rather than impose, could over should, and pronouns widen perspective, we over you. Conscious communication operates on 4 pillars. 1. Temporal awareness, allowing thought, breath, and body to synchronize before speech. 2. Relational syntax, structuring language to include the other rather than accuse them. 3. Reflective phrasing, Preferring inquiry over assertion. What did you mean? Instead of you're wrong. 4. Somatic resonance, matching tone and tempo to the body's current state. Each pillar transforms language from transaction into co-regulation. Words become bridges rather than barricades. Consider the difference. Survival syntax. Calm down. Conscious communication. I can see this feels intense. Let's slow down together. The former commands change. The latter co-creates calm. Both aim for regulation, but only one route through resonance. Syntax as state training language doesn't just express regulation, it trains it. Each time we choose a slower phrase, we cue the vagus nerve towards safety. Each reflective statement rehearses patience in the musculature of speech. Over time, this practice transforms our syntax into a somatic script, a pattern that rewires not just thought, but tone. In this sense, every conversation becomes a neural rehearsal. We are teaching our nervous systems how to handle complexity through the grammar we select. This aligns with Hebbian learning, the principle that neurons that fire together wire together. When compassionate phrasing consistently accompanies emotional charge, the brain begins to pair tension with tenderness. Eventually, kindness becomes instinctual, not because we suppressed reactivity, but because we rewrote its rhythm. This is the quiet revolution of the future tongue, not erasing conflict, but repatterning its delivery. The role of reflection in evolving syntax-conscious communication depends on reflection, both internal and relational. Before we can reshape what we say, we must witness how we say it. This is where the mirror linguistic hypothesis serves as a compass. MLH posits that every phrase we utter returns as feedback, an echo in the nervous system of another. When we speak sharply, we feel the ricochet. When we soften, we sense the settling. Language, then, is a loop, and every loop is a learning opportunity. Reflection questions for evolving syntax. What state was I in when I said that? Did my tone reflect my truth or my tension? How might I rephrase this to invite, not instruct? Through repetition, these reflections cultivate lexical resonance, the alignment between word, tone, and intention. Practice. The slow sentence to embody this evolution. Try the slow sentence practice, a micro-ritual for recalibration we live by. Because metaphors are not ornamental, they're operational. They encode the nervous system's expectations, and they script our perception long before we realize we're following a story. Metaphor as operating system. George Lakoff and Mark Johnson once wrote that the metaphors we live by shape every layer of human thought. I've come to see this as more than a cognitive idea. It's a physiological reality. The mirror linguistic hypothesis proposes that metaphor functions as an embodied mirror, a reflective code that the body enacts before the mind interprets. When we say, I'm under pressure, the muscles tense. When we declare, I've hit a wall, the body feels confined. When we confess, I'm drowning, breath shallows automatically. Metaphor isn't just like the feeling, it becomes it. The nervous system doesn't wait for translation. It takes the phrase at face value, responding as if the words were literal. In nervous system language terms, we might say metaphors are somatic scripts, linguistic shortcuts that trigger embodied states. When a culture defaults to metaphors of war, fight illness, battle depression, combat climate change, it primes its people for chronic vigilance. The lexicon becomes a loop of mobilization, adrenaline masquerading as agency. The future tongue will need gentler metaphors, not to soften truth, but to allow it to be held. Symbolic cartography, mapping perception. Every metaphor is a map, and like any map, it omits as much as it includes. When we describe emotions as up and down, high spirits, feeling low, we organize experience along a vertical axis of value. Up is good, down is bad. So we strive upward, fearing descent even when descent might mean grounding. When we describe relationships as journeys, we privilege progress and direction. But what if love is not a journey at all? What if it's a landscape, something to dwell within, not depart from? These linguistic coordinates become emotional coordinates. In my observation, metaphors serve as cognitive anchors. They fix meaning in place, sometimes too tightly. When those anchors belong to an outdated worldview, the psyche becomes moored to past safety patterns, unable to sail into new awareness. To evolve perception, we must redraw our maps. And this cartography is not theoretical, it's somatic. When we replace climbing the ladder with tending the garden, our nervous system shifts from striving to stewardship. The future tongue isn't interested in progress as ascent, it seeks integration as an ecosystem. From mechanism to ecosystem, the metaphors of the industrial age were mechanical. We spoke of productivity, efficiency, and output. People became cogs, emotions became malfunctions, relationships became systems of exchange. These words still linger in our bodies, especially in how we self-assess. I'm not functioning. I need to fix myself. I've broken down. These are mechanical metaphors, and they evoke mechanical solutions, repair, replacement, and control. But we are not machines. We are living systems. The future tongue must pivot from mechanism to ecosystem. Instead of fixing, we can cultivate. Instead of breaking, we can returns like a shadow stepping forward. These reactions are not metaphorical. They are measurable. Neuroscience tells us that semantic processing isn't confined to the brain's language centers. It recruits the limbic system, emotion, insular interoception, motor cortex, preparation for action, and brainstem nuclei, autonomic regulation. Meaning is not a mental file, it's a full body broadcast. The nervous system doesn't just decode syntax, it interprets safety. And so, each word becomes a small signal, either expanding our field of awareness or collapsing it. 4 layers of the neurosemantic map. Through my own reflective practice, I've observed that meaning can be mapped across 4 interlinked layers. These layers are not theoretical, they are experiential coordinates anyone can trace through awareness. 1. Cognitive layer, the story we tell. Definition, concept, thought. I know what this word means. Example, freedom means choice. 2. Emotional layer, the feeling it evokes. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, calm. I feel lighter when I say this. Example, freedom feels like fresh air. 3. Somatic layer, the sensation it triggers. Tightness, release, warmth, tremor. My chest opens when I speak it. 4. Memory layer, the echo it awakens. Past associations, relational imprints. It reminds me of being allowed to explore as a child. When we map all 4, we don't just understand a word, we inhabit it. This is neurosemantic cartography, the practice of becoming fluent in the felt geography of meaning. The regulation map in nervous system language, words act as regulatory cues. They can upregulate or downregulate our state, like internal levers of tempo and tone. We can imagine a simple continuum. Every word we use carries a physiological echo. Some tighten the body, some hold neutral ground, and some open us back into ease. In mirror talk terms, language operates like a tuning fork for the nervous system, each word striking a particular state. Contractive words are those that activate the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, the fight or flight response. They create urgency, control, or a sense of compression in the body. Phrases like I must, I should right now, or hurry tell the system that safety is conditional, that movement must be immediate. They often arise in environments of pressure or perfectionism, where worth feels tethered to performance. These words tighten breath and shorten attention. The body braces before it listens. Neutral words live in the middle. They are context dependent, neither tightening nor expanding the body on their own. Words such as maybe, later, if, or possibly allow for ambiguity. In a regulated state, they can offer flexibility and space for reflection, but in a dysregulated one, they can feel like avoidance or vagueness. Their power depends on the emotional landscape they're speaking from. Neutral language teaches us that meaning isn't fixed, it's relational, shaped by tone and timing. Finally, expansive words activate the parasympathetic system, the branch that restores calm, curiosity, and connection. They open the chest, slow the breath, and create physiological permission to stay. Words like can, choose, explore, and breathe invite the body to soften into awareness rather than brace for impact. They carry the rhythm of agency rather than urgency, and signal to the nervous system that safety is present, not pending. In practice, the nervous system doesn't distinguish these categories intellectually, it feels them. Each word becomes a cue, a small signal of whether we're in danger, in doubt, or in dialogue. The more we notice these micro shifts in our vocabulary, the more fluently we can speak the language of regulation. You don't need a chart to use it, you just need curiosity. When a word lands, ask, does my body lean in or recoil? Over time, you'll notice that your lexicon mirrors your state. A stressed mind speaks in commands, a curious one in invitations. To rewire the state, we must re-encode speech. Exercise. Mapping a word, choose one word that feels charged for you. Maybe success, love, or trust. Then trace it through the 4 layers. Cognitive. What do I believe this means? Emotional. What feeling emerges when I say it aloud? Somatic. Where does that feeling live in my body? Memory. What past moment, person, or image surfaces? You might discover that a word you thought was empowering actually tightens your chest, a sign that its definition has been colonized by expectation. Or a word you've avoided, like softness, might bring peace, signaling readiness to integrate gentleness once mistaken for weakness. This is how neurosemantic awareness turns vocabulary into recovery. MLH connection, the feedback loop in mirror linguistic hypothesis terms, each word becomes a reflective node. The meaning we assign mirrors the mirror itself, our internalized worldview. If a phrase like I need help mirrors danger due to past rejection, the body tightens before digital platforms reward brevity, tweets, texts, and captions. As syntax shortens, tempo accelerates. The nervous system, entrained to scroll speed, begins to mirror that urgency offline. This is linguistic entrainment, when digital rhythm resets biological rhythm. We type faster, breathe shallower, respond sooner. Every exclamation point becomes a pulse spike. Every scene notification is a cortisol cue. The body keeps the digital score. To regulate, we must slow the scroll, practice deliberate tempo even in text. Practice slow tech ritual each day, dedicate 1 hour to unmediated language. No prompts, no predictive text, no replies. Speak aloud, write by hand, or voice note freely. Let your sentences meander, let syntax stretch. This is not nostalgia, it's neural hygiene. It's how we remind our bodies what human time feels like. Over weeks, you'll notice your tone soften, your breath deepen, your patience return. Your nervous system will relearn conversation as communion, not computation. Reflection prompt. Ask yourself, do I type to connect or to control? Do I seek being heard or being seen? What does my language look like when I'm rushing? And what does it sound like when I'm real? Remember, digital fluency is not emotional fluency. And AI may echo our words, but it cannot evolve our wisdom. As technology learns to speak in our image, the invitation is not to resist, but to remain rooted. We can teach machines syntax, but only consciousness teaches meaning. In the next element, we'll explore cultural repatterning, how shared safety signals, metaphors, and tonalities can weave a global nervous system, ensuring the future tongue becomes not just faster, but freer. Cultural repatterning toward a global nervous system. If language is the architecture of perception, then culture is the ecosystem in which that architecture grows. Every society carries its own syntax of safety, the gestures, tones, and metaphors that signal trust. But as our world becomes increasingly interconnected, our nervous systems now meet across languages, screens, and time zones. We are building what I call a global nervous system, an emergent collective body composed of billions of microsignals mediated through words, tone, and image. The question is no longer whether we're connected, but how consciously we are, because connection without coherence is chaos, and translation without trust is noise. To evolve beyond linguistic tribalism, we must learn to mirror across difference, to treat every culture's tone, metaphor, and silence not as foreign, but as further, not a threat but a threshold. This is the practice of cultural repatterning, the conscious expansion of our linguistic and nervous system range to include, not exclude, the unfamiliar. The nervous system is global. When I first travelled outside my home culture, I realised something profound. I could sense safety before understanding a single word. A warm gaze, a slower rhythm in conversation, these were universal cues. My nervous system recognised them, even when my intellect didn't. This is the foundation of NSL at a planetary scale. Beneath linguistic diversity, the nervous system speaks a shared dialect. Breath, tone, rhythm, and presence. Across nations and tongues, parasympathetic signals, soft eyes, steady tempo, and unforced laughter communicate what no translation app can. You are safe here. But when those signals are absent, when tone sharpens, tempo quickens, or silence stretches, the body hesitates. Even the most fluent speaker can misinterpret intention if prosody contradicts content. A global nervous system requires shared regulation rituals, collective ways of pausing, breathing, and acknowledging presence. Without them, our discourse risks becoming an arms race of speed and certainty. Language as cultural nervous tissue, each culture develops words that encode its relationship with safety, time, and emotion. These words act like neural clusters, micro-languages that reveal collective conditioning. In Japanese, ame describes the gentle dependence within close relationships, a permission to need. In Portuguese, saudade expresses the bittersweet ache of longing, grief braided with gratitude. In Danish, hygge holds the comfort of intimacy, warmth, belonging, and quiet joy. In Xhosa, Ubuntu means I am because we are, identity as relational resonance. Each of these is a regulation phrase in its own right. Each signals a worldview where the self is with, not against. In mirror linguistic terms, these words are cultural mirrors, reflecting collective metaphors that shape identity. In NSL terms, they are somatic spells, phrases that invite a specific bodily state. To repattern culturally, we must become polyglot empathists, not fluent in grammar, but fluent in gesture. We must ask, what does peace feel like here? Polyglot empathy and temporal expansion. Learning another language doesn't just expand vocabulary, it expands temporal perception. Studies in cognitive linguistics show that speakers of tenseless languages, like Mandarin or Finnish, often perceive time more fluidly, while speakers of strongly future-marked languages, like English, treat the future as distant and uncertain. Our metaphors determine our patience. If your culture says time flies, you'll rush. If it says time walks, you'll breathe. This is not poetic, it's neurosemantic programming. The metaphors we inherit dictate our nervous system's tempo. To build a global nervous system, we need temporal empathy, the ability to coexist with others' pacing, to slow our rhythm without assuming something's wrong, because sometimes the safest thing you can do is wait. MLH and the collective mirror, the mirror linguistic hypothesis, teaches that meaning emerges through reflection. When scaled globally, this implies that civilization itself becomes a mirror, shaped by the languages it speaks most often. A culture that mirrors through accusation will breed suspicion. A culture that mirrors through invitation will cultivate dialogue. When we observe international discourse, media, diplomacy, and social platforms, we see the collective mirror. At work, outrage becomes a lingua franca. Certainty becomes status. But there is another mirror we can build, one that reflects curiosity instead of conflict. Imagine if the first global language wasn't English, Mandarin, or code, but compassionate prosody. Imagine if the metric of fluency wasn't grammar, but grace under pressure. This is the invitation of cultural repatterning, to mirror humanity, not hierarchy. The grammar of peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of coherence. And coherence requires linguistic architecture built from trust. Consider how metaphors encode morality. Fight for justice frames virtue as combat. Cultivate justice frames virtue as care. Build justice frames virtue as collaboration. Each metaphor creates a distinct nervous system state, battle readiness, patience, or partnership. A global nervous system will require a grammar of peace, one that invites dialogue rather than dominance. This means rewriting cultural scripts that glorify conquest, speed, or certainty, replacing them with those that honor integration, rhythm, and reflection. Reflection. Expanding the mirror, take a moment and ask yourself, which metaphors define my culture's idea of strength? How do those words shape my body? Do they soften or stiffen me? What other cultures' metaphors could expand my understanding of peace? Write one down, speak it aloud. Feel how your physiology shifts when you inhabit someone else's lexicon of calm. For me, learning Ubuntu reshaped my relational awareness. It softened the edge between self and other. The body recognizes truth faster than the mind. Sometimes all it takes is a single word from another world to remind us who we are. Practice, mirror exchange. To repattern culturally, we must practice cross-linguistic mirroring. Here's how. 1. Choose an individual from another culture. Meet with curiosity, not debate. 2. Exchange one word of safety. Ask, what word makes you feel at home in your body? Learn its pronunciation, rhythm, and story. 3. Mirror the word, speak it softly. Notice your breath, your shoulders, your jaw. 4. Reflect together. Discuss how it feels, not just what it means. Over time, you'll develop a shared lexicon of safety, micro-bridges of belonging that transcend grammar. Each new word becomes a mirror neuron handshake, your nervous systems aligning through empathy, not ideology. The role of media and education. If we want a world fluent in safety, education must teach nervous system literacy. Children should learn not only how to conjugate verbs, but how to regulate tone. Imagine classrooms where students practice NSL, learning to breathe before they speak, reading prosody as carefully as punctuation, translating emotion across cultural syntax. And media, too, must evolve from clickbait to coherence. Platforms could prioritize calm language as much as virality, rewarding rhythm over rage, because the collective nervous system is impressionable. The metaphors we repeat online become muscle memory offline. Integration. Cultural coherence practice this week. Try a global breath ritual. Each morning, choose one regulating phrase from another culture, a word that signals peace, patience, or unity. Speak it slowly, synchronized with breath. Example, Ubuntu, inhale connection, exhale individuality. Hig, inhale warmth, exhale rush. Saudade, inhale memory, exhale grasping. Let it become your nervous system's passport, a way of traveling inward before traveling outward. Cultural repatterning invites us to expand our nervous system's vocabulary beyond the boundaries of birthplace or tongue. But true evolution isn't just collective, it's personal. To sustain global coherence, we must design living languages, personal lexicons that root universal principles in individual practice. In the next element, we'll explore integration practice, designing your living language, a guide to building a self-authored vocabulary of truth, safety, and vision. Because the future tongue doesn't emerge by decree, it's built word by word within. Integration practice, designing your living language. Every language is inherited until it's redesigned. The words we use most often are rarely chosen, they are absorbed. They arrive in our nervous system through repetition, tone, and social rhythm long before they become conscious decisions. But if language builds reality, then redesigning language is redesigning life. This is where integration becomes invention, where we move from analyzing the past to architecting the future. To design your living language is to choose words as companions, not commands. It's to reforge vocabulary into a compass, one that points towards safety, coherence, and vision. A living language is not static. It grows as you grow, breathes as you breathe. It's not a doctrine, but a dialogue between your body, your mind, and the world. And it begins by noticing what each word does to your physiology, not just what it means in theory. Because the nervous system doesn't care about semantics, it cares about sensation. And the subconscious doesn't follow grammar, it follows tone and repetition. If your goal is to live more consciously, your first task is not to find new beliefs, it's to curate new words. Step 1. Becoming the linguistic architect. Before you can design a living language, you need to identify the foundations you've been building on. Every nervous system carries a linguistic blueprint, a set of words, metaphors, and idioms that form the structure of emotional experience. To uncover yours, ask, what are the phrases I repeat daily, almost unconsciously? Which words surface when I'm under pressure? Always, never, should, can't. What metaphors describe my life, fighting uphill, hanging by a thread, on borrowed time? These aren't just expressions, they're architectural cues. They shape the space inside which your thoughts move. For instance, I'm behind creates a corridor of urgency. I'm learning opens a hall of possibility. I should builds a ceiling of constraint. I can opens a skylight of agency. In NSL terms, each of these phrases cues a state. In MLH terms, they become mirrors reflecting your inner assumptions. To design consciously, you must first see the scaffolding. Practice the linguistic audit 1. Take a blank page. 2. Write down 10 words or phrases you use often. 3. Next to each, note how your body is thinking. It's about nervous system congruence, speaking phrases that your body can believe. 3 categories of a living lexicon. 1. Words of truth, anchor you to reality, clarity, and self-honesty. Examples: this is how I feel right now. I don't know yet. I need a pause. 2. Words of safety, re-establish calm, presence, and trust. Examples: I can slow down. My breath is enough. Safety is awareness, not absence of fear. 3. Words of vision, orient you toward growth, curiosity, and creation. Examples: I'm learning. This too can teach me. I can co-create peace. To build your lexicon, choose 2 or 3 words or phrases from each category. Speak them aloud once daily, not as affirmation, but as regulation. Use breath to pace delivery. Each phrase is a micro-practice. These words become your linguistic anchors, internal stabilizers during external change. They evolve as you do. Some will stay for life, others will serve a season. The goal is not a fixed vocabulary, but a fluid one, responsive to your current developmental edge. Step 4. Creating a living language charter. Once you've curated your lexicon, the next step is designing a living language charter, a written manifesto of how you intend to speak to yourself, others, and the world. It's part declaration, part discipline, a way to codify compassion into your daily speech. A charter might include guiding principle: my words are instruments, not weapons. Core intention: I speak to connect, not to control. Safety anchor: if I feel contraction, I slow down. Repair ethos: when misunderstanding arises, I mirror before I manage. Vision statement: my language builds what I believe in. You can write it in full sentences or poetic fragments. The format is secondary, the felt sense is primary. This document becomes your reference point, a compass for communication under stress. When reactive patterns resurface, revisit your charter. Read it aloud. Let its cadence reset your tone. Over time, the charter ceases to be a text. It becomes texture, embedded in muscle memory, shaping your nervous system's default response to conflict, uncertainty, or emotion. Step 5. Practicing daily linguistic alignment integration is repetition. Each time you use a phrase from your living lexicon, you lay down new neural tracks, literal pathways of regulation. Neuroplasticity ensures that repeated words, especially those paired with calm states, become baseline syntax. What begins as deliberate practice becomes instinct. Here's a daily ritual to strengthen alignment. 1. Morning grounding. Speak 1 word of truth aloud upon waking. Example: I'm here. Today is new. Feel your feet. Breathe into the phrase. 2. Midday regulation. Use 1 word of safety when tension rises. Example: I can slow this moment down. Pair it with a slow exhale. 3. Evening reflection. End with 1 word of vision. Example: I grew today. Tomorrow I'll listen differently. Track your state before and after. Notice subtleties: jaw tension, heart rate, internal monologue. Over weeks, your baseline tempo will shift. Remember, alignment is less about eloquence, more about honesty. Speak what's real, then refine its rhythm. Step 6. Embedding the MLH and NSL principles. Every time you practice conscious language, you're applying the mirror linguistic hypothesis and nervous system language simultaneously. MLH. Your words reflect your state, shaping meaning through mirrored feedback loops. When you speak safety, you mirror safety, inward and outward. NSL. Your body reads tone and rhythm before meaning. By pairing calm prosody with conscious phrasing, you rewire the nervous system toward coherence. Together, these frameworks form a biolinguistic bridge, translating insight into embodiment. When you forget, don't default to shame. The nervous system doesn't learn through critique, it learns through curiosity. Ask, what did my language need just then? Not, why did I fail again? Step 7. Reflection and expansion. Ask yourself, what word or phrase has carried me this far, but no longer fits who I'm becoming? Which new word feels like home in my body? Can I feel the difference between safety that silences and safety that supports? Write your reflections as dialogue between old and new selves. Let your nervous system negotiate. No need to force fluency. This is how linguistic evolution occurs, not by erasing, but by integrating. Old words become roots, new words become branches. Step 8. Sharing and social resonance. A living language grows stronger when spoken in a community. Every time you share a regulating phrase with a partner, child, or friend, you create a microculture of coherence. Invite others. What words make you feel safe? Can we use these when we talk about difficult topics? This builds linguistic consent, a shared agreement about how to communicate under stress. Over time, mutual phrases become relationship anchors, transmits a lesson in conditional safety. The words are identical, but the nervous system hears the truth beneath the syntax. Children become fluent in our tone before our teachings. Their internal voice, the one they'll hear in adulthood when facing failure, conflict, or joy, is tuned to the melody of our early speech. This is why repatterning language matters. It is never only self-work, it is ancestral work in real time. When you speak with awareness, you're not merely communicating, you're editing a lineage. Education beyond the classroom. Most systems of education still prioritize cognitive instruction over somatic communication. We train literacy in symbols but neglect literacy in states. Yet emerging research in social neuroscience and polyvagal-informed pedagogy shows that safety precedes learning. A dysregulated child cannot absorb algebra, only alarm. A shamed student memorizes facts but forgets their voice. A silenced classroom learns compliance, not curiosity. To teach effectively, whether as a parent, mentor, or educator, is to first co-regulate. The voice that says, "It's okay to make mistakes," in a tone that truly means it, unlocks cognitive bandwidth. Safety is the doorway to scholarship. So, what would an NSL-informed classroom look like? Tone as teaching tool. Teachers use prosody intentionally, lowering pitch and pace when stress rises. Phrasing for permission. Instead of "stop talking," try "let's pause so we can hear." The shift preserves connection. Repair as routine. After conflict, both adult and child reflect. What did we each feel? What can we try next time? Silence as integration. Brief moments of quiet after learning allow the nervous system to consolidate, not just the mind. Education in this model isn't a transfer of data, it's the tuning of resonance. NSL-informed parenting and teaching in nervous system language. Tone is not decoration, it is instructional code. A child's body learns rhythm, safety, and boundaries through repeated acoustic and gestural cues. Think of tone as emotional punctuation. A sigh softens the full stop. A hum extends the comma of connection. A whisper marks an invitation, not an order. Every phrase we offer a child carries a somatic signature. Hurry up compresses. Take your time expands. Stop crying constricts breath. I'm here with you reopens it. By rephrasing, we're not only choosing new words, we're coding regulation into syntax. Children raised in NSL environments can grow up fluent in self-soothing through language and emotional intelligence. They don't need to silence emotion to survive. They've learned to narrate it safely. This isn't indulgence, it's neural training. Each moment of calm phrasing activates pathways for reflection rather than reaction. Over the years, these accumulate into autonomic literacy, the ability to read and write one's own state. MLH and the child's mirror. According to the mirror linguistic hypothesis, the child's developing sense of self is a hall of mirrors, reflections gathered from caregivers, peers, and media. When these mirrors are cracked, inconsistent tone, double messages, neglect, the child's internal dialogue becomes fragmented. Repairing this means becoming a consistent mirror, reflecting emotion accurately, translating behavior into meaning, and showing that language can hold contradiction without collapse. For example, instead of "you're fine" when a child is upset, try "you're hurting, but it's okay, you're safe." Instead of "don't be silly," try "you're curious, let's explore together." Each statement mirrors truth plus safety, both the feeling and the frame. Through such exchanges, children learn that being seen and being safe can coexist, that truth doesn't have to threaten belonging. The role of storytelling is one of humanity's oldest teaching methods, and one of its most neurologically effective. Narratives engage mirror neurons and emotional coherence, helping children simulate experiences safely. When stories model repair, courage, and reflection, they encode psychological scripts for future regulation. A bedtime tale where a character apologizes and grows is not moral propaganda, it's neurosemantic rehearsal. So, when crafting stories for the next generation, include moments of misunderstanding and reconciliation. Use sensory detail to describe calm, rhythm, breath, and warmth. Avoid moral binaries. Show complexity held with compassion. These stories become emotional templates, maps children later consult when navigating their own conflicts. In this way, language teaches life, not just literacy. The family as linguistic ecosystem. Families are ecosystems of repetition. Words circulate like weather, predictable, patterned, shaping climate. To shift a family system, introduce micro changes. Replace "be quiet" with "let's find our calm." Swap "because I said so" with "let me explain why." Trade "stop overreacting" for "I see that's a lot for you." Each substitution alters the emotional oxygen of the home. Over time, children mirror the new syntax, not through instruction, but immersion. This is how linguistic evolution happens. Small phrases repeated daily become the grammar of an era. Practice. Teach one phrase. To translate theory into action, choose one NSL phrase today and share it with a child your own, a relative's, or a student's. Examples. You can take a breath. Your feelings make sense. Let's slow this down. Observe their body. Do their shoulders lower? Does their breath deepen? This is real-time mirror feedback. You're witnessing language as co-regulation. Repeat this phrase regularly. Let it become part of their inner lexicon, a reflex of reassurance when you're not around. Every repetition is a gift wrapped in tone. The language legacy each generation inherits not only DNA but discursive ancestry. Our task is to become conscious ancestors, editors of the syntax that structures the future. Ask yourself, what linguistic legacies did I inherit that I want to evolve? Which words once kept me small that I now refuse to pass on? What tone do I want remembered in my lineage? Your children, students, and successors will not only recall what you taught, they'll speak in your state. If you teach through calm, curiosity, and compassion, their nervous systems will carry those rhythms into workplaces, relationships, and communities. This is intergenerational regulation, safety transmitted through syntax. Reflection prompt. Take a quiet moment and write down, what language legacy am I leaving? Let your operators. The first word was never mama or no, it was tone. And through awareness, we learned we can rewrite that tone, not to erase the past, but to speak safety back into it. Episode 2, The Silent Treatment. When absence speaks next, we enter the cold rooms of absence, where silence isn't emptiness but echo. Ghosting, withdrawal, and avoidance became mirrors of nervous system collapse. We recognized that not every silence is punishment. Some are protection. And yet, even unsent messages carry neurochemical signatures, cortisol spikes, tightening breath. In the silent treatment, we gave language to the pause, discovering that clarity emerges not by breaking silence, but by understanding it. True communication begins when we stop assuming meaning and start sensing state. Episode 3, The Apology Loop. When sorry becomes survival from absence, we move to appeasement, tracing the apology as a nervous system reflex. We distinguished between remorse and regulation. One restores trust, the other buys temporary safety. We saw that sincerity is measured not by frequency, but by transformation, that a changed tone is worth more than repeated words. Through self-inquiry, we began to ask, am I apologizing to repair or to disappear? This was the first glimpse of mature language, speech not seeking approval, but alignment. Episode 4, You Never Listen. Projection and perception conflict entered the room, and with it, our shadows spoke. We met projection as self-communication, the unintegrated voice accusing the outer world. We learned to decode defensive dialogue, to pause the blame reflex, and to translate anger back into unmet need. Here, mirror talk evolved from theory to practice. We practiced hearing behind words, noticing nervous system shifts, and using reflective phrasing. What did you hear me say? Listening, we learned, is not agreement, it's attunement. Episode 5, Lost in Translation. When meaning misfires in the age of infinite information, miscommunication became inevitable. We explored how neurodivergence, culture, and cognitive load distort understanding, not through intent, but through physiology. We traced misfires to attribution bias, emotional arousal, and echo chambers of language. Through MLH, we remembered meaning is co-created, not contained. Through NSL, we saw how over-arousal collapses syntax, how urgency shrinks nuance. Repairing misfires began not with better vocabulary, but with slower breath, reclaiming comprehension before correction. Episode 6, Word Wounds, healing the tongue that turned against us every criticism, every cruel command, once carved itself into our internal lexicon. Here we faced verbal shame, the sting of should, never, enough. We recognized words as spells, repeated phrases forming neural grooves. By decoding the grammar of guilt, we reframed correction into compassion, turning stop crying into you're feeling deeply, and that's okay. This episode marked a threshold, the recognition that language can wound, but it can also rewire. Episode 7, The Script of Silence. Speaking from the freeze from external harm, we turned inward, meeting the voices we buried. We explored learned muteness, compliance mistaken for peace. Through cultural, familial, and gendered lenses, we saw how silence had kept us safe, but small. Through mirror practice and gradual exposure, you began to test the sound of truth again, whispering once buried words, allowing your throat to thaw. Silence, we discovered, isn't the absence of truth, it's truth waiting for safety. Episode 8, Anchoring Safety. Words that steady the storm now grounded, we learned to speak to the body first. Anchoring statements, I can take one breath, I am here now, became ropes in rising tides. Through co-regulation, we felt safety as shared syntax. Through self-regulation, we found it within. Anchoring safety reframed speech as somatic intervention, proof that language can slow the pulse, widen the lungs, and remind us survival is not the same as presence. Episode 9, Building Bridges. Repairing connection after rupture here, language became architecture, bridges built word by word. We practiced Gottman's repair attempts, traced tone as scaffolding, and rebuilt meaning after conflict. We explored digital repair, recognizing how text without tone can fracture trust, and learning to type with empathy, not efficiency. Through the 3 rupees, regulate, relate, rephrase, we learned that repair is not about perfection, but participation. Bridges, like bodies, require maintenance, not mastery. Episode 10, The Future Tongue, Designing a Living Lexicon. And finally, we stepped into authorship. Here, you began crafting your personal language, one that mirrors your maturity, your nervous system's evolution, and your vision of peace. Through MLH and NSL, we merged philosophy and physiology, proving that language is both map and mirror, tool and teacher. The future tongue is not invented, it's remembered. Each word reclaimed from fear, reshaped by awareness, and returned as a building block of belonging. Your voice is not an echo of the past, it's a seed of what's to come. Art reflection. From foundational awareness to relational mirrors, Layer 1 asked you to listen to your breath, your body, your inherited lexicon. It invited you to notice how early tones wrote your nervous system, and how awareness lets you revise the script. You've learned that language is more than speech, it's state, story, and signal. Now, as we cross into Layer 2, relational mirrors, we move from inner fluency to interpersonal harmony. The next arc explores dialogue as dance, where two nervous systems compose meaning together. We'll trace projection, boundary, empathy, and belonging, how tone travels across relationships, and how collective language evolves from personal regulation. Coming next, Layer 2, Relational Mirrors, Episode 11, Echo Chambers in a World of Infinite Noise. Why do we only hear ourselves? We'll explore conversational feedback loops, ideological filters, and emotional resonance, discovering how to build bridges across difference, not just within. Because communication is not about winning the word, it's about widening the world. Thank you for walking through Layer 1, for listening not just to the voice, but to the silence beneath it. Mirror Talk has never been about perfect speech. It's about present speech, language alive in your body, aligned with your truth, attuned to your breath. If you've arrived here more fluent in your nervous system, more compassionate in your tone, more aware of the mirrors in every word, then you're already speaking the future tongue. Speak as if tomorrow is listening, because it is. Each breath you take shapes the language of the next generation. Let your words be steady, not scattered, invite, not injure. The conversation continues, and so does your voice. Welcome to the next chapter, Relational Mirrors. Until then, thank you once more for joining in this explorative journey. You've been listening to Mirror Talk, the language of the nervous system. I'm James Miller.